Now, you know what? I never really dealt with Vince Jr. that much because when I was there, his dad was running it. And Vince was kind of starting and doing the broadcasting. And I was really dealing with Bruno and his dad. And Vince at that stage was, kind of new. And Vince wanted to get in the ring, but his dad didn't want him to right then. And Vince did a good job on the mic, but he learned the business and he caught on good from all of those school guys because when the era was changing and television was now changing into nationwide cables, Vince was the new young promoter on the block that saw it coming. The other promoters were still the old school guys like Vern Gagne and the Crockett's and Fred, and they didn't see the new era coming. Vince saw it coming.
And I understand you had a phone conversation with Vince in those days where you actually started crying.
Well, you got to remember, promoters, and Bruno would drill in my head out. The promoters will try to get you to do anything and do everything and pay you the little as possible because there was no contracts.
Right.
So there was times when you had to really stick up for yourself. And now I'm a kid, and then we had a couple of little arguments over paydays because I was the one getting shot at and drawing the house, but Backlund was getting a bigger paycheck.
Yeah, he had a $6,000 guarantee.
They had some guarantee, if you were the champ at the car. So I told Vince, I said, hey, I don't care what you pay Bob, but I want more than him because I'm the one drawing. It's just fair. So in those days, there was no cell phones and nowhere to get a hold of people. So Vince Sr. would he hung up on me once. And then the story was he's en route from his Miami home back to New York and no one can reach him. So then Bruno told me, well, just don't show up for the house shows and they'll freak out. So I don't show up for a few main events at the small clubs. They freak out. So Vince Jr. calls me. And he's on me, and his approach was different. He's going, come on, you want to give my dad a heart attack, Larry? And I almost confessed because I felt so bad for the guy. But I was a kid. I was like 25, 26. I'm doing what Bruno told me to do because,
right.
And Vince, Vince is an emotional guy. So he'd be yelling and he'd be going, oh, come on, man. He had me on the ropes. But I didn't cave, so...
And you ended up getting 5% of that Shea Stadium gate, I guess?
Yeah, I think I was 5%, and Bruno got like 5.5%, a little bit more than me. Or maybe 6%, 1% more. There was some deal going on. But I learned a lot. I basically did what Bruno said, because I didn't know that stuff. That was old school, top guy. If you weren't a top guy, you couldn't do that.
Right.
If you were someone that went up to Vince and said, hey, I think I better get this money out the door, you'd be. So it was stuff that really no one knew except a couple. You had to be a top guy to pull it off, and I didn't know this. But that's how I learned. I learned the hard way.
Do you think that's why, despite how much heat you had, they kind of got rid of you very shortly after that Bruno match?
Well, yeah, there was probably kind of, some but they didn't try to get rid of me right away. But there were some games being played.
Right.
And it was kind of interesting because they would say like, hey, I think you should wrestle Pedro Morales 3 times in Boston. So right away you say to yourself, oh God, well for the next 3 or 4 months, I'm gonna make a bunch of money because I'm gonna be the main event here for 3 months and the main event. And then when you get to there,
because in those days the main event made
the money. Oh yeah, that's where the money.
About a percentage of the card according to where you were.
And then what deal you had with them, But then when I got there, things would change, and they would expect, like Pedro maybe to win, and I would only do a 1-shot instead of the other 2, and I'd say I can't do that. That wasn't the deal. So you had to stand up for yourself too.
Right.
So after a few of those, it got to the point where, and Bruno actually told me to do this because Bruno never beat me.
Right.
He walked out of the cage so I wouldn't get killed, but he never beat me in any shows.
Right.
And he did that on purpose, so I had an excuse to use and say, hey, Bruno never beat me, so I can't make Bruno look bad.
Yeah.
And then, Skolin and Fanini and Monsoon would go, yeah, well, that's right. So I used that, but then it was time, really, because I had so much publicity, if I would have stayed there, they would have tried to use all the heat up, and probably, I'm sure maybe Vince would would have liked to punch me in the face back then.